Great job, guys. Oh, I just want to make sure that I have what I need. Thank you for sharing that and for feeling deeply into the message so that it could be one. So I want to invite you to think about something for me. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I want you to think about a time in your life when you just completely flew off the handle. You know what that means? Okay. I don't know. You guys are very evolved. I don't know. Maybe you've never done that. Or if you can't think of that time, think of a time when you met somebody and you just instantly did not like them. You just didn't like them. You just got a feeling, I don't really like you. And if you're still a little too evolved for that, maybe think of a time when you were interrupted and it infuriated you. Has anyone ever experienced any of those things? Okay. So those are experiences of the world triggering our shadows. The world triggering our shadows. And our shadows are anything that is something that we don't want the rest of the world to see. It's something that we either hide consciously or unconsciously because we don't feel that it's appropriate or we don't want people to know that about us. And I want to share with you a really dramatic example of this, okay? Just so you kind of get the gist. Remember that book, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Okay, well, I want to tell you a little bit about it, but then I want to tell you about the idea behind it. So, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll was this very competent, well-known doctor, and he created this elixir that he would drink so that the evil part of him would come out. And it's this story about addiction and the evil that resides within a human being. Because before this, it was written in 1886, and before this, there was never any literature that depicted evil inside of a person. It was always some creature, right? Like a devil with horns or something that was unhuman. And so what I want to share with you is about the author. The author of this book, his name is Richard Louis Steinberg, I believe. And he was actually a very well-known, very prominent children's book writer. And he wrote these sweet, loving, funny children's books. And so when this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde came out and it was a bestseller, people started to wonder, what the heck? You know, how could this really sweet, innocent man end up writing such a horror book? And it turned out that this author, he also kind of had two things going on in his life. He was that sweet children's book author, but then he was also obsessed with this Scottish sociopath from the 1700s. He was obsessed with learning about him and understanding him. And his name was, they called him Deacon, this sociopath. So by day, Deacon was this gentleman who would go around, and he was so well respected. Everyone loved him. And at night, he was a compulsive gambler, a sexaholic, a criminal. And because of that, that inspired the author to write this book. And I know that this is a very dramatic representation of the shadows that we hold within us, but how many of us have actually found ourselves acting or being two different people, like one person at work, another person at home, one person with our family, another person with our friends? Have you ever had that experience? And it's interesting, we wonder why. Why does this happen? Why are there so many unconscious parts of us that we are not able to recognize. And at the very end, I want to help us with a practice that we can use to actually recognize these and bring them into the light. But first, I want to share with you this saying that I heard, and I can't for the life of me figure out who I heard it from, but it said that in all stories, there is a hero and a villain. And in your story, you are the hero and the villain. In all stories, there's a hero and a villain, and in our story, we are the hero and the villain. And Carl Jung, who was a psychologist who did a lot of research and very thought-provoking information on the shadows and how to process through them. He wasn't the first one to work on this, but he was very inspiring. He said, everyone carries a shadow. And the less it is embodied, the darker and harder it becomes. The less that it is embodied, the darker and the harder it becomes. And what I know is that we are a people, we have been drawn into this community or into communities like this. We have been drawn on this spiritual path of our life because we are, consciously or unconsciously, courageous enough to start looking at ourselves. To start saying that I know that change, I know that healing, I know that the world and the betterment of it begins with me. Looking at my stuff, at my inner bleh, that I can't even see. Yeah? Right? You are very courageous, whether you know it or not. It takes courage to be responsible for yourself. It takes a lot of effort to be thoughtful about your actions and your words and how it's showing up. And there's this idea in this philosophy, because we're a very positive, affirmative philosophy, where we say that we're perfect, whole, and complete. You know? We're perfect, whole, and complete. And sometimes that sounds like a load of BS, right? It's like, oh yeah, maybe you are, but you don't know me, you know? And sometimes it can be a spiritual bypass. You know what that is? Like you're like on the on-ramp and you're going over all the traffic in our life, that we end up saying, oh, you know, when the poop has hit the fan, so to speak, and we're like, oh no, it's all good, it's all God, right? Yeah. So we kind of bypass the stuff that's our shadows, that's that darkness inside of us, because we don't want to deal with it. We just want to be positive and happy, and we want to pray, and we want to affirm, and we want to know, and then that should be enough, right? But we cannot pray our way out of becoming aware of ourselves. We cannot pray our way out of our shadows, or else we are going to turn ourselves into this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Because we're going to be meditating and peaceful and all that, and then we'll go home, or at least I will, and my kids will do something crazy, and I'm like, bah, right? I mean, maybe, I don't know. If you've had kids, maybe you understand what I'm saying. But I want to invite us today to really own our shadows, to embrace them. What I know is that this idea that we hold that we are perfect, whole, and complete. I know that we are that. Like, that is the real overarching truth. That we are whole. But what whole means and what perfection means is that there is perfection in all of our flaws. That we are complete means that we're enough just the way we are. That we're whole means that we are multidimensional, multifaceted beings who are 50 Shades of Grey, right? Like we have everything on the spectrum between the darkness and the light. And in knowing that and in recognizing that can bring so much freedom. In saying, yeah, aha, I see it. And I'm going to own it. And I'm going to work with it to transform it into something that helps me and heals me and doesn't hold me back or doesn't hurt other people without me even realizing it. And so I just want to invite you to close your eyes for a moment. I want to share with you a passage that Carl Jung wrote, and it's a little crazy, but I want to see if we can just allow ourselves to embrace it. So if you want to close your eyes, just take a deep breath. And he says this, he says, be silent and listen. Have you recognized your madness, and do you admit it? Do you not want to recognize your madness and welcome it in as a friendly manner? Let the light of your madness shine, and it will suddenly become dawn again. Be glad that you can recognize it, for you will thus avoid becoming its victim. Madness is a special form of the Spirit and clings to all teachings and philosophies, but even more to daily life, since life itself is full of craziness and at its bottom, utterly illogical. We strive towards reason only so that we can make rules for ourselves, but life has no rules. What this, you can open your eyes if you'd like, why I want us to feel the point that he's trying to make is because when we embrace our own shadows, when we embrace who we are, our little bit of craziness, our little bit of whatever it is that we're holding in, it naturally pulls it into the light and becomes more of who we are. When we are standing facing the sun and we are drenched in the light, there will always be a shadow. That's just a part of it. That's a part of what makes us whole. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the philosophy we study, in a book called Living the Science of Mind, he says that the signposts on the road to fear are so many we can't even count. He says, but each leaves its imprint upon the growing mind and plastic memory of the child. It is little wonder that he arrives at maturity in a state of perpetual fear. The signposts on the road to fear are too numerous to mention, but each leaves its imprint upon the growing mind and plastic memory of the child. It's little wonder that they arrive at maturity in a state of perpetual fear. And this is not to say that we get to blame somebody else for our stuff. It's not to say that we get to blame our parents or say that it's not ours to own because someone else did something to us. But it is ours to start looking at, where did this come from? These triggers that I have, this fear that I have, this anxiety that I have, where did this come from? A lot of times we just don't know. We live with it until for a moment we can remember that point of dissonance between where we thought that we were just a good child and we were told to be seen and not heard. Or we were told that little boys don't cry. Or we were told that we need to grow up. It's not always our parents. It's not always that. We don't always have to blame other things or other people, because once we become adults, we have to take responsibility for our own stuff, right? No matter who might have imposed it, no matter how it might have come about, when we become conscious and aware that there is a universal presence and power that supports us, when we acknowledge it, we have to take responsibility. Marianne Williamson, she says that the sign, we already heard that. She says that it takes courage to endure the sharp pains of self-discovery, rather than choosing to take the dull pain of unconsciousness that would last the rest of our lives. It takes courage to endure the sharp pains of self-discovery rather than the slow, dull pain of enduring this for the rest of our life. And I know that I'm willing to be on this journey of these sharp pains, and I encourage you to be on this journey with me. That's why we're here together. Because when it's painful, we can support each other. But self-discovery is so vitally important, not only for ourselves to live a healthy life with well-being, but if we unconsciously have these triggers and these shadows, they're hurting our partner, they're hurting our children, they're hurting our parents, they're hurting all the people who are around us because we don't even know when we're reacting, right? And we think, gosh, that's not me. I'm not like that. I remember somebody used to tell me, you're very intimidating. And I'm like, me? I'm shy and quiet and nervous and awkward and and they're like, oh no, you're scared of me? I feel like this frightened little girl, and they're like, right? That was my shadow, like saying, here I am, I guess, like, here I am. And that was one of the most brilliant ahas in my life, was recognizing that I wasn't even aware of how I was being. And so the thing that we can do, what can we do? So we realize that there are these dark parts of ourselves. Maybe we realize it and we're pushing it away. Maybe we don't realize it and we have no idea. But either way, what we can do is, I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to write it down if you have a pen or a piece of paper. How often are you questioning the nature of your reality? And broken down very small could be, question the nature of your reality. Question the nature of your reality. This experience happened recently where my husband and I, we've almost been married for a year, and we're newly co-workers, right? Co-senior ministers here. And so sometimes when we're in a meeting, I'm speaking from a certain language and he's speaking from a certain language. And we're going, saying the same thing, but it's like, whoa, you don't understand, or this is what you're right. And if there was something videoing us, right, so we could see what's really happening, that'd be fabulous. Because there are stories that I'm telling myself, right, and there's stories he's telling himself. And in that, we're reacting to each other through those shadows, those unconscious, right? I mean, you might not have seen it, but it happens. And even our leadership chair at the Marjorie, she goes, do you know you guys are saying the same thing? And I'm like, no, we're not, And so this is what we do. And so what I can do from now on is question everything. Before I say anything, hopefully, or I guess after if it has to be, right? Question everything. Question what I'm saying reality is. Question what my story is. Question my intention. Question my motives. Question what I'm telling myself. Question everything. When we're acting or reacting or feeling these strong emotions within us and we don't know why, question it. Where is this coming from? What is this? What are my motives? What is my intention? What's the story I'm telling myself? There is an ultimate truth that we are spirit in life. We are spirit in action. But with this whole deal of free will, right, of getting to choose whether or not we want to be conscious, of getting to choose whether or not we want to continually be aware of ourselves, because goodness, it can be daunting, right? And we think, oh, haven't I prayed enough? Haven't I meditated enough? Am I still going through this? Yes, because we're not sometimes willing to see what is right there behind our eyes, right there behind where we're saying, oh, okay, this is a part of who I am. So what I want us to do is to question. What are we going to do? We're going to question. What are we going to question? Everything. Okay, start small. So maybe, right? So maybe we don't question it before we react, but maybe we spend 5 minutes at night saying, okay, do I feel good about all the interactions I had? Oh, where did that come from? Okay, question. Oh, what was the story I was telling myself? Oh, like John's looking at me right now. He looks really tired. So I must be boring him right now, right? And really, afterwards, John's going to say, oh my gosh, that really touched me. I was so into it. It's just, when he's into it, his face is like this, right? So the story I'm telling myself, the story he's telling himself, and those are just our own insecurities. Those are just our own shadows. He actually didn't look tired. I was just, he taught me well, though. So I just want to invite us into prayer, into an affirmative prayer right now, just recognizing that there is a wholeness to spirit, there is a wholeness to this divine intelligence of the universe that says yes to everything. When we don't want to deal with something, it says, yes, okay, we'll put it away. When we feel that urge of that good pushing us forward and pulling us into our greatest next experience, it says yes. And so we allow ourselves in this moment to be free. I affirm right here and now that every person in this room, the Spirit is allowing us to be free from the shackles of the shadows and embracing them and pulling them into the light with us. Allowing them to teach us things about ourselves that we had never known. There is something so good about life. There is something so precious, so beautiful about the love and relationships that we get to have with ourselves and others. And I know that every step we're taking on our spiritual journey, whether it looks like it or not, is bringing us to our next great experience, to that next level of clarity. So just feeling into this good that I call God, I say thank you. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, life. Thank you, every divine being that is here today sharing in this experience with me. I am so blessed. And so it is. So it is. Thank you all for being here with me. Thank you. Thank you.